One of the things that people forget is that real estate is not about brick and mortar, it's about people. Both if you work in the industry, it's about relationships, connections, trust, good or bad. That's still how this industry works.
Craig, thank you for coming in today. I think one of the cool things is that I'd always seen you at conferences and speaking on stage, and it's one of those funny things when you look up to someone and because they have such expertise in a field you're always curious about. And so thank you for coming in, because I'm really excited to dive in today into the curious world of co-working and remote work versus in office, and then also scaling unique different types of old school and new school technology businesses, and kind of mixing that with real estate. So thanks for coming in.
Well, first and foremost, I thought you were going to say, hey, I thought you'd be taller.
Yeah.
But alas, you didn't, and it's good to be here. It's good to be here in Atlanta Tech Village.
Yeah.
Like, who knew Atlanta is now one of these global marketplaces for where tech and innovation is happening, and just as an ATLian, someone born and raised here, it's just exciting to see it happening. And so thank you for having me be a part of the show.
Absolutely, and I truly believe that Atlanta is becoming this hub of real estate and proptech, and you're seeing a lot of founders move here from the cities. Moving from San Francisco. Where did you live before here?
Yeah, well, born and raised in Atlanta.
Okay.
But like a lot of real estate folks, you felt like you had to go be in New York. And so I was there for 12 years and then just recently came back. And so it feels like a new place. I left, came back, and it's a new world. Amazing.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you've held some incredible roles. Like, first off, let alone you were at WeWork, heading up global growth.
Yeah.
You were at Industrious, which is now owned by CBRE, and incredible, C-suite role there.
Yep.
But you were also the CEO of a couple different firms. So can you break that down for us a little bit of some of your roles?
My resume is kind of like Where's Waldo? You're just kind of popping up, or either,
Love it.
But let me tell you, the interesting thing about what's happening in the industry is that over the past 2 decades, there's just been a ton of consolidation. Initially, consolidation on the ownership side. The Brookfields, the Blackstones start consolidating a lot of the ownership of office. Inside of the tenant and occupier world, there was a centralization, consolidation of spin, and then that begat the consolidation of the service providers. And I was just lucky, Chris. I just happened to be in the services world when it was consolidating. And so in some respects, if you just stood still, you would grow.
Yeah.
And so I had a chance. I started my career with Trammell Crow, like a lot of folks did, and which went on to be CBRE. And then there was this kind of roll-up consolidation that started happening a few years later with companies like Cassidy Turley. I ran their corporate services business for a few years. We sold the company to TPG. It's now Cushman & Wakefield. Amazing. Then I had a chance to run the U.S. region for Colliers International when it was still a series of affiliates. We consolidated them, went public. Amazing. And then ran corporate services for Newmark. But it was around that time where, listen, I'm a Gen Xer.
Yep.
Gen Xers are kind of cool because we kind of sit between these two massive generations, the boomers and the millennials. And in some ways, that was kind of what was happening in real estate. We have this old analog, and I don't mean old in a negative sense, but we had kind of the traditional way of thinking about real estate, which is where I began my career and learned so much. But then there was this new movement coming around, like this new millennial-based kind of way of thinking about technology and innovation. And so as a Gen Xer, I felt I could kind of sit on that cusp. And so I spent the second half of my career in the tech and innovation space with companies like WeWork and Industrious and now a few corporate boards.
I love it because, and that's one of my goals with this podcast and these conversations is to share some of the playbooks and the lessons learned. The successes are great.
Yeah.
That's, but you have generally more failures and mistakes that you've learned from that you can share with others. And I'm kind of curious to hear, because I actually, put out a little post to get some questions beforehand.
Sure.
I actually just met up with one of your colleagues from Industrious on Friday.
Yeah.
Perry. And
amazing professional, super smart guy. I love him.
Just he lives and breathes real estate.
He does.
And so I think one of the things I want to ask you about is, as a leader, I think one of the most important roles is finding great people and helping them to be the best they can be.
Yeah.
What is it that you've learned about finding great talent and then retaining that great talent, especially in a space like real estate?
Yeah. One of the things that people forget is that real estate is not about brick and mortar, it's about people. Both if you work in the industry, it's about relationships, connections, trust, good or bad. That's still how this industry works. But then the real estate itself is about housing people, either at work or in their places of shopping or home. And so the human condition is one of the most important and powerful things that we are reminded of constantly every single day in this industry. And the things that I'm most proud of in my industry is just having had a chance to work with amazing people, be inspired by amazing leaders, recruit, coach, be a shoulder to cry on. And they've also done that for me. When I was at Trammell Crow Company, I was right out of business school. I was so excited to go be a developer and be a deal guy. That's what you're taught in school. It's like you're going to go do deals. And I was asked as a kind of a volunteer initiative to help lead MBA recruiting. Now, I was thinking to myself, like, why are you guys asking me to do this? Don't you want me to work on deals and do big, important stuff? And I said, okay, I'll do it. I'll do recruiting. And I had no clue, Chris, that would be the most important thing that's not on my resume. Let me tell you why. There are 3 things that happened when I did MBA recruiting at Trammell Crow. One, every single year I went to all of the universities. I went to Harvard, to Wharton, to Darden, and I would recruit all of the people who would ultimately come and work for Trammell Crow and or other companies. So I got a chance to meet people at a point where they were coming into the industry. I'll give you an example of one of the folks that I met and recruited was Adam Weir. Adam went on, joined Trammell Crow. Years later would be the COO of Trammell Crow and the C-suite exec. But I met him when he was coming out of B school. The second thing is this was an opportunity for me to go to all of the leaders within Trammell Crow and say, do you need an MBA recruit? So I got a chance to meet everyone in the company and understand what their needs for talent was. And then who was I to go meet with division leaders and talk to them about their talent needs? But the third thing, and probably the most important, was that recruiting talent was such an important initiative for Trammell Crow that Bob Selenick, now CEO of CBRE, who was then CEO of Trammell Crow, was personally involved with our recruiting, and so was Diane Pattison, who was the COO of Trammell Crow and later COO of Prologis. So here I am, 28 years old. I'm hanging out with Bob Selenick and Diane Pattison, amazing, amazing giants in our industry, recruiting great talent at the beginning of their industry journey, and then also building my own brand inside of the company. So it was about talent that gave me really, if we're being honest, an opportunity to be on the radars and minds and hearts of people who really matter.
It's incredible, too, as you share, because many of these people have rotated around, as you mentioned.
Yeah, absolutely.
From commercial real estate, residential, logistics, like Prologis.
Sure.
One of my neighbors was there, and he just jumped to a family office here.
Sure.
In real estate. And it's so interesting to watch what drives people, what motivates people. I'm excited today because I think we're going to hit on, traditional real estate and old school into the new school and what worked, what didn't work with WeWork and Industrious.
Sure.
But then I know you're very humble. Also, you have a book coming out.
Yeah.
So I'm really excited to kind of dive into that. And that's a interesting parlay because you would think maybe you'd be hitting on real estate and co-working and all these different companies, but you're going to take it into, my understanding is you're going into happiness.
Yeah.
So are you going to give us some secrets from that book and maybe a little tips? Okay,
absolutely.
Cool.
Yeah.
Awesome. So we'll get into that in a moment. So if we think about your time at these large, incredible organizations that became multi-billion-dollar firms, tell me about the first days coming into WeWork. What brought you to WeWork? What was it about that vision, that mission, and maybe the leadership there? And how did they recruit you on board, if you can go back to that story?
No, absolutely. Well, listen, the 2009, 2010, around the time that WeWork came to be, co-working had been around for a long time. Regis and now IWG had been doing this, kind of for the long time. It was a product. It was something out there. So co-working wasn't new. But what was new was this inspirational and aspirational brand called WeWork, which many of us hadn't really at that point in time when I was running a division for Colliers really appreciated what was happening. But this was the first time in real estate history where you took something like office space and branded it and made it relevant and meaningful to individuals. And this was exciting. This was really exciting. And although I had been building and growing traditional real estate businesses like Colliers and Newmark and Cassidy Turley, I really wanted to be a part of where I thought this next wave and generation of thinking was going. And there really weren't a lot of companies who were doing that at scale. Mm-hmm. And WeWork was that opportunity. Truth of the matter is, before I actually joined WeWork, a year earlier we talked, as they were saying, hey, we think we might want to get into the enterprise space. You got to keep in mind, they were primarily kind of the platform for the small guy, the gig worker, the small business. And Miguel, who's one of the co-founders of WeWork, will probably tell the story of just how in their board meetings and their executive meetings, they were struggling whether or not to focus on the enterprise. Was that selling out the culture of WeWork to kind of go focus on these big corporate tenants? And some back and forth over a year or so, they decided they wanted to lean in heavy. And that's when they reached out to me, someone who had been on the services side, servicing big corporates and owners, but was still young enough and scrappy enough to kind of get what they're doing. And so in some ways, it was a good marriage. Fast forward, 50% of WeWork's customer base ends up being enterprise.
Isn't that funny how that works?
Interesting, yeah. So,
well, I want to go deeper on what you just said, because we're getting into the remote and in office versus out of office in a moment. I think you just hit on something, which is finding the right people for the right job and finding spiky people.
Yeah.
Who are it's something that David here talks about, which is finding the person who is best at that at the right time.
Yeah.
And I think one of the challenges is, you think about WeWork and a lot of startups, is oftentimes they're like, we don't need to listen to the experts.
Yeah.
We can just do it ourselves. We'll figure it out.
Sure.
So where do you have that balance of hiring and finding the right expert in that space, like enterprise, versus saying, no, we're going to go a different way? Because I think many people make a massive mistake in real estate by ignoring the experts, and sometimes they make a mistake of also listening to experts. So how do you have you thought about when the right times are? Because I know you do actually a lot of case studies.
Sure.
Again, you don't brag about it, but you went to Harvard and MIT. You're a professor at Emory, so I'm sure you're doing a lot of these case studies here. Have you dove into that?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay.
I teach a class called Technology and Innovation at Emory Guazetta Business School, and my preference is to use case studies.
Okay.
The more we can understand important critical decisions through the lens of the protagonist, and it forces you to say, what would you do?
Yeah.
How would you deal with this moment, this crisis, this uncertainty? And I love that. But just to answer your question, it's a good one. When you go back to kind of the beginning of proptech, and you've been an OG in this space, so you remember the language was actually quite confrontational. It was disrupt. Let's disrupt the old guys. And it almost kind of, the implication was that what was being done was done wrong, or being done by people who did not know better. And it was kind of like this civil war of sorts between kind of the new age and the old age. And unfortunately, that prevented the transfer of ideas and talent. And actually probably the flywheel of scaling businesses faster, because you were basically saying to the people who were running businesses and service companies and investment shops to be on guard. We're coming for you. And that was the wrong way to think about it. And I think some of the early WeWork mindset was let's disrupt the real estate world. And I give Dave Fano a lot of credit. Dave Fano was the chief growth officer. He was one of Adam's chief lieutenants, who said, you know what, I think it would be great to have someone on our team who has the perspective, who understands the pain points, who understands if we were to solve this problem, how would we solve this in a way that really matters? And I think that gave permission for people like me to feel safe that my voice and my perspectives and experiences might be valuable and useful. But also, I think it played a small role in making sure that we solve the right problem, and we address the needs that were most critical to not only corporations, big guys, but to the small companies who wanted to be big guys.
Yeah.
This is the interesting thing, Chris. Humans, the human condition. I don't care if you work for a company that has 100,000 employees or 100 employees. The human need to feel important and relevant and belonging is the same.
Yep.
And we miss that fundamental truth when we're solving these problems, which is why I think ultimately, Adam and Miguel went on to say, look, we can reach more humans in the needs that they have to feel relevant and useful and purposeful in their space if we were to go and service the large companies. And so anyway, this is really about the human condition.
What's funny, and I think you hit on several points I want to go deeper on, so we're going to have to do another episode.
Yeah,
because there's
sure.
just enough time. I want to make sure we cover some of the things we discussed. But when you're looking at WeWork, as you said, Adam and Miguel, and they even had a little give and take between them, at least from what we saw in We Crash. So love to get your take on We Crash, because the way it portrays Adam is this wild, brilliant person, but that had a lot of ideas to push the boundaries. But it also seems like he had people influencing him to tell him, and investors telling him to push those boundaries. Yeah. So it seems like he was smart enough to find the great people to put on that ship. He was smart enough to, and I've never met Adam or Miguel, but they were smart enough to bring the right people on the ship, to try the right things, find the right partners, because they signed agreements with some of the largest real estate firms in the world.
Absolutely.
What was something maybe that they or the team got wrong? Was it We Live? Was it something else? Or maybe that seemed right, maybe it still is right, but that maybe it was just too big of a pivot at the time. Was there something that stood out to you that maybe they missed or the team missed?
Yeah, it's a great question. Listen, Miguel is still a really good friend of mine.
Yeah.
He in my,
he seems like a great guy.
He is an amazing person, and he has, for me, this is my words, not the words of any biographer, but he's the heart and soul of what a lot of people believed in.
Okay.
It was a movement. It was a culture of elevating the world, one workspace at a time, and making a life, not just a living. And those are things we believed in. And I would tell you that some of the things that Adam and Miguel did well, and history will prove out. This was the first time that people expected more of space, wanted more from space, associated a brand promise, which was WeWork, with a product. We'd never done that in office. Maybe you did that in hotels and maybe retail to some degree, but real estate largely had been kind of a supply side driven phenomenon, not demand side. We didn't really care about the human condition. And that was something that they did well. Adam was really good at convincing people to believe in his vision. And he convinced investors and landlords, and there probably will be few people who've done as good a job. Miguel was always the person who reminded us why we were doing this, that this was literally about people and connections, and I am grateful for him. But I'll tell you what I think the industry learned, and there are lots of things that you can learn from it, and a big part of why VCs invest in companies is to encourage experimentation. Let's try a lot of things. I'm going to give you the capital and the time and the space to experiment. So experiment with different use cases for flex, like living or schools. And some of those proved to not be, really good use cases. But I think what people don't appreciate was just how much pressure that came from having an investor like SoftBank.
Sure.
And Masai, who had been very successful in his investment with Alibaba, I believed, I've never met him, but my sense is they approach things from let's buy the TAM, and then let's figure out how to monetize it later. And so I believed, Adam was encouraged very early on by Masai to go faster, to go bigger, think bolder, take more risk. And so in some ways, the caricature of Adam it can be unfair if you're not also taking in consideration some of the driving forces behind him to go faster, to do more. Now, here's the other part of what I think the industry has since learned is that flex and coworking is not really a venture business. VCs are looking for businesses, generally contemporary ones, that look and feel more like SaaS companies. They grow fast, 40, 50, 60, 100%. Eventually have fairly low capital costs, high marginal operating margins. And that's not really the case for coworking and flex, and it has not been. And so I think in some ways we had a capital product mismatch. You had venture pressure and expectations for a company that was fundamentally, in my opinion, a service company. A service company that used technology, that had technology DNA and aspirations, but at the end of the day, We designed, built, and operated spaces within traditional buildings that were owned by landlords for human beings who had jobs. There wasn't, and so that's a beautiful, amazing business, but that's not a tech business.
Yeah.
And I know this will be disappointing for me to to say to some of the folks who really believe that we were, but we weren't, and that's okay. We were a great business. The model of funding billions and billions of dollars to grow really, really fast without dealing with the unit economics of what does it cost us to do this?
Yeah.
Is this truly scalable? Will we ever have an extremely high margin profile the way you would in software if we got to scale? And I think you can look to the WeWork story to see how it ended. It does not. Fortunately, I think there are other models like Industrious and now Vast coworking who have demonstrated that there are other more scalable ways to grow in a cost-effective way. And I think that's a big part of what we miss. And unfortunately, the sensation of the rise and fall of WeWork misses that the product market fit was good. People love the product. They want flex. They want choice. But the cost structure and the way it was funded was not.
It's funny you say that because, and I want to dive into Industrious in a moment, but your story about SoftBank.
Yeah.
I worked at a VC fund.
Sure.
That was backed by SoftBank.
Yeah.
And we wanted to move faster than ever before.
Sure.
And we did move faster than ever before. That was ultimately our downfall, was that we were deploying capital to investors, to startups, and we were making 48-hour decisions.
Sure.
And expecting 48-hour responses.
Yep.
Which is incredible.
Yeah.
And now it's very difficult to do when you're doing reputation backgrounds. These companies are also not Series A or Series B. They are pre-seed, even just idea stage. Haven't even been launched.
Sure.
It was an incredible time, but you're right. And at a certain point, the capital stops flowing.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it's interesting because I think then about a company like Uber, right, which can be debatable in the early days. It was a technology. It was building off of this other era, but I think to your point earlier is finding people who believe, when you hit a wall, like in Uber where they hit the logistical wall, which is taxi cab union. And I remember meeting Uber in the early days. I remember seeing WeWork in San Francisco in the early days.
Sure.
And both companies, I said, interesting. I put my money on WeWork rather than Uber because I'm like, Uber's way too expensive as a black car company, right?
Sorry you made that bet.
No. I mean, just personally, I made that bet in my head. I wasn't an angel investor yet. But what I'm saying is that for me, Uber had such a massive wall. But what I learned after, now having been through businesses and startups and now being an investor is, to your point, is within real estate or other sectors, you have to ask, okay, this has never been done before.
Sure.
This is incredibly difficult because of lobbies, because of laws, because of the way the industry works.
Sure.
And I always ask the question, what would have to happen for this to be true?
Yeah. Great question.
So I'm curious about, for you, when you were building, you were working globally at WeWork.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so you were building in other countries where there may have been laws, could have been people in place that did not want you coming to their country to disrupt their businesses.
Yeah, absolutely.
How did that go? Did that go well in every country? Were there any stories there of where it went well, but maybe actually some stories of cities or countries where it did not go well?
Yeah, really interesting story. One of the coolest things about my role, I ran a global division for WeWork. We designed, built, operated spaces in every corner of the world. I had teams in Tokyo, in Shanghai, and throughout China, Latin America, Europe. And so I had a chance to go not only meet and spend time with our teams who were architects and construction folks and our community managers in all of these different countries, but also the customers in the spaces. And what was so cool to learn with things like in China, the WeWork brand was considered a premium brand. And it was an aspirational brand. All of the companies felt that being inside of a WeWork space immediately kind of created a certain premium kind of push to them, which was obviously very different than if you were here in the U.S., where I think Industrious was really aiming for that kind of premium cachet, and it did. And at every part of the world, people wanted amazing work experience. The human condition was the same, but the way people talked about it, the way they, experienced it was different. And one of the things that was very interesting, there was a time where everybody wanted technology that would track utilization. How often were people coming in and out of space?
Using this couch, using that chair,
using this couch,
that
using
room.
this. And so just as an interesting thing about how culture is different. In the U.S., people are very uncomfortable. Privacy concerns, policy and regulations and laws mitigate and limit how much you can track someone. And so that became, I'm not sure how well we're going to be able to do that. But in China, on the other hand, it was not only possible, but it was already being done.
Wow.
So in two different parts of the world, what we can do and what was allowable and what was socially expected was wildly different. Another example, just how your experiences in different regions are informed by what's happening in that country. In India, we had a franchise partner who operated a lot of our WeWork there. Finding Class A office space that was built to code, that was safe, that was a bigger issue than you would even think.
Okay.
Like actually finding an office building where the building was built according to code was a bigger precondition to finding space that worked for us than you would think. So partnering with a developer who built the buildings and could validate and verify that the spaces were high quality was something you just take for granted. You take for granted that the elevator is going to work and that the building that has the right, permits and all that kind of stuff. But
Or the owner's going to say they're going to do what they say they're going to do.
they're going to see
Right.
exactly.
They're going to do what they say they're going to do.
So, and then I'll tell you one interesting thing. I had never really spent a lot of time in a country where there was like 0% vacancy.
Huh.
In Japan, particularly in Tokyo and some of the places where we were, like had no vacancy. And so, one, getting space in a place where there's no vacancy, but just once you had it, our space was completely full all the time, in part because in that country, supply constrained, vacancies were just really low. So again, thinking about globally, laws, regulations, culture, politics, the underlying condition of real estate, but also to the underlying supply-demand dynamics and how wildly different our experiences were around the world.
It's funny because I do recall going to New York City to go to Hudson Yards.
Yeah.
And when they were building out those buildings, and I was meeting with Brookfield, I think I was meeting with Related. This is, I'm imagining it's around 2017, 2018, 2019. I can't remember exactly, but I remember being in some of the buildings. We were going around Manhattan. We were looking at the lockers, for packages. And I remember seeing sweet green racks in the offices, and I'm like, oh, that's interesting.
Yeah.
I'm like, not on the lobby, on like the 40th floor, the 20th floor. I'm like, how the hell are they getting this amazing real estate, sweet green?
Yeah.
And then they were telling me, oh, by the way, we're doing our own co-working. We're testing it and trying it ourselves. Not in the way that, they were doing flex. Flex. So I think there's, if we think about the different types, but they were doing like, you could get a floor or a half a floor or a quarter of a floor, but I think that's as small as Brookfield went, was like a quarter or half of a floor. And because they weren't going to go into Industrious or WeWork's territory. So when we think about like, you've got co-working, right? True co-working, in my view, where you've got flex, where you have flexible leases, so it's no longer the 5-year or 10-year. Then you've got also the challenge of, for leaders, in office versus remote. And then, and flex work. So what's your take? We got to settle this once and for all.
Let's do it.
What is it?
Let's throw it on the flag, on the field.
So let's start with the Brookfield one. Should real estate operators be doing it themselves, or is the Industrious / WeWork model is the right way to go?
Let me tell you, you've got two personas, just to simplify the world, in the world of owners. You've got those who are playing defense, meaning I need to have a flex solution for someone who might need that in my building, and or I don't want to lose a tenant because I don't have what is now viewed to be a Class A high performance building amenity, which is flex. And for them, having flex options in the building is fine. For those who are going on the offense, meaning I want to capture my fair share, if not more, of what is a a trend and a growing demand that we're still in the early innings for flex. They're likely going to need a partner, either an operating partner or someone who's operating in the building. And I'll give you an example that one you can relate to. Most any real estate owner, developer, service provider can relate to. Hotels.
Mm-hmm.
If you are a hotel developer, you will ask yourself, what's the right flag I need for my building? I'm building a hotel, but I have not yet decided what's the right flag. And you'll make that decision based on a few things. You'll decide, one, what's the demographic? Am I going after the business traveler, the tourist traveler, the price point? And you'll come up with a sense for the type of hotel you want. And then you'll ask yourself, what's the right operator of that type of hotel product and experience? Marriott, for the most part, particularly at their, outside of the U.S., is franchise.
Mm-hmm.
Most of their hotel locations, Marriott's, are actually owned by other real estate developers and owners. But that developer will say, I want the Marriott experience, I want their platform, and most of all, I want their access to their Bonvoy loyalty members.
Yep.
So what developers and real estate owners are not good at doing is they're not good at aggregating demand. They're not really good at operating, particularly this kind of experiential kind of service, and doing that at scale repeatedly in a cost-effectively way. And so, like hotels, many office building owners have to say, what type of experience do I want in this building? Who has access to those members on their platform already? Who has a product that is repeatable and scalable, and we can see that it works? And so for those owners, they're going to want to pick their flag, their flex flag. So let me just be super clear. Flex is here. It's here to stay. It is not going anywhere.
Yeah.
It's not going anywhere because of two things. One, organizations need flexibility. They're going to want flexibility. Why do they need flexibility? Because of uncertainty. The more uncertainty there is in business, in this world, the more flexibility I need. What do you think AI is going to do for the average business? Does it make people more certain of their future or less certain? Do I need more flexibility or less? I'm going to venture to say you would say they need more. So
yes.
One side of this is organizations are going to want and need more flexibility to support a dynamic business. The second reason why is because the humans who work inside of these organizations are going to want choice.
Yep.
They're going to want the ability to work within the space in lots of different capacities. We used to design space with the expectation that people might have 5, 6, 7, 8 different modes of work in one day. I might need heads down quiet time. I might need a quick convening to let's brainstorm some idea together with a colleague. I might need space to convene and host people. All of those different needs of space need to be built and reflected. But then hybrid is also something which is important to remember, that people need work to work for them.
Mm-hmm.
And being able to work at home, work in the office, all of that is part of the human need and condition for space to work for them, not the other way around.
Yes.
So for that reason, Chris, Flex is here. We're in the early innings. It's not going anywhere because of the human need and the organizational need for flexibility.
What do you think to the folks who, and I completely agree with you, I think there's different people, different lifestyles. I remember when I was single and no kids, traveling the world.
Yeah,
and
sure.
I was out, I was like, hey, I can work remote. I went remote in 2010. I'm like, I never need to be in an office. I can be everywhere. I can be on a plane,
Sure.
hotel. And then I was like, okay, I kind of miss being in the office sometimes with people. I don't need to be there all the time, but I do miss being there, and like you said, that connectivity. But then number 3, now we've got the extreme of moving that direction, and now companies saying, we're going to pull you out 100% back in the office 5 days a week.
Yeah.
JP Morgan saying it. I think Amazon and Starbucks have kind of said, maybe it's 4 days or 5 days. Do you think that's more of a strategy, from the standpoint of, we're going to do that attrition, because if you don't come back, maybe you'll quit, and we need to have some people leave? Or do you think it actually is the getting the smartest people in the room because I'm just trying to understand the forcing someone to do something 5 days a week versus
it's the wrong
balance.
Approach.
Okay,
it's the wrong approach. Listen, I understand the problem they're solving. They're solving an old world problem, which is a return on assets problem. It's like, we have all of these assets, we need people to use them.
we spent $1 billion.
We spent $1 billion, and so unfortunately, that mindset, although well intentioned and I understand it, is solving the wrong problem. The problem that you're solving is, how do I get people to unlock their creativity, to collaborate, to be productive and engaged in the ways that are material and important to the organization, and what is the role that space plays in that? Mm-hmm. Now, solving that is a return on human capital, not a return on real estate capital question. And if you're doing that, it will lead you to do very different things. Now, Professor Sudal Neely at Harvard Business School has been doing some amazing research on this. I highly recommend you check her out. She also does a lot of research on AI.
One more time, what's her?
Sudal Neely.
Sudal Neely.
Yeah,
okay.
she's the now the dean of the MBA program, just a prolific thinker. But she did a lot of research on actually studying productivity in remote kind of situations. And what we learn and now understand is going to be intuitive, which is humans, Homo sapiens, social animals, need strong tie relationships to build trust. And you need strong tie relationships and trust to be productive, to collaborate, and ultimately to do important things. It is hard to do that at scale from a remote distributed space. You need opportunities to come in and for people to build strong type relationships. And so for that, we need space. And space plays an important role. So the question is, how do you curate space such that that happens naturally and organically? How do you make sure that when someone shows up in space, they're going to find the person that they actually need to spend time with? Yeah. And that they're going to be the different kind of modes of workspace there that accommodate what we need to do. And the problem is, Chris, people are solving the question of just how do I get people in without thinking about that. And I get it. It's hard. Yeah. It's hard. And sometimes people don't like to do the hard things. If you happen to be a big brand, or a big important company CEO, you bang your fist on the table and you tell everyone,
just do it.
You just have to do it.
You do it.
And you might feel good that you're solving that return on asset issue, but you're not solving the return on human capital issue, which I think is far more important, but also more difficult.
I love this because this dovetails into the idea of how do we find, and that was a question that came up from some people when I posted about our discussion, is how do you find happiness at work?
Sure.
How do you find purpose?
Yeah.
I think a lot of times say do what you love.
Yeah.
Some people say that's horrible advice. Some people say find your passion. I think there's also discussion around do what you're good at, because then you can be happy. Yeah. So, is that what you're diving into? Maybe take me from the learnings you've had.
Sure.
Obviously, being a professor, working at incredible startups and being on many boards, now you're writing the book on it. So tell me a little bit about what if I read your book, what is my curiosity to read the book, and then what are some of the things you're solving for me as we dive?
I have to credit just my time in Flex and spending time around companies like Vast and Industrious and WeWork and others who have all been playing a really important role at that. That really was the origin of me thinking about happiness, which largely how do you design and build and operate spaces that people want to come in, engage, be proud of the work they're doing, love connecting with their colleagues. And just over the past few years, I spent a lot of time thinking about how you do that from a space perspective. Since leaving kind of the Flex world, I've thought more broadly, opened the aperture and said the human need for happiness depends on, yes, thinking about what I do at work, but thinking beyond that. I'm going to give you one really important stat, and it was kind of a showstopper for me, and it really was a launching point. You have a less than 1% chance of being fulfilled in life if you're not also fulfilled in your work. I'm going to say that again. You have a less than 1% chance of being fulfilled in life if you're not also fulfilled in work. So, as an example, think about your kid who's in college, or your mentee who's in grad school, or someone who's just starting their career, and they're beginning with the mindset of how can I be successful? How can I make a lot of money? How can I have status? How can I do all of these things, which historically has been the way we've approached work, our sense of value in work, knowing that those things won't lead to fulfillment and happiness in work, and therefore not in life. I have since been curious about how do we then, not only in work, but in every other aspect of our life, make the tough decisions that unfortunately the scripts that we're given from people who care about us and love us, those scripts are not designed to lead to happiness. I was never told to go do the thing that brings me joy and fulfillment. I was told to go do the thing that I can make money doing and I was good at.
Yeah.
But
or is respected by your parents, society, friends, peer pressure.
Absolutely. And if you're going to do something that made you happy, you probably weren't going to make a lot of money, and like maybe you should just do that nights and weekends. And that is absolutely wrong. My book, the Happiness Reboot, is about rebooting many of the scripts that we're running in our personal lives and our professional lives that research has shown will not lead to not only happiness, but probably not lead to success either. And so, yes, real estate in the built environment has an important role to play in that, but each of us has to understand that these scripts that we're running, you have to be willing to shake the Etch-a-Sketch, clean it, and replace them with scripts of your own choosing.
Love that. As I think about this, it's that stat you shared about the one, being happy at work and what you do and finding purpose there is important for life. I've met a lot of people who never need to work another day in their life.
Sure.
We can think of people in the news as well,
Yeah.
but a lot of people in real estate. And you look at Warren Buffett, right? He just passed the baton to the next CEO, and he surprised everyone. But I think it was actually very smart what he did.
Sure.
He said, "I'm not going anywhere. I'm still going to be at all the meetings. I'm just going to be sitting in a different seat, and I'm still going to be involved in all the decision making. But the company's probably going to be better off because he's going to make faster decisions. He's going to be better off. But more importantly, so that was a business decision. But Warren Buffett is worth billions, tens of billions, and still has not retired. And I don't think he ever plans to retire.
Yeah.
And I think about that because when we sold our company, and many people, you've been successful in companies, is like I had always thought about retirement as this end game.
Yeah.
Where you say, oh wow, I don't need to do all this stuff during the day, and I can leave that and go off and be happy in life.
Yeah.
And I'll never forget taking some time off. I took about 6 months off, and you're bringing back the memory right now. Is I went and played golf by myself for a few days. I think it was 5 days in a row.
Yeah.
And I was bored out of my mind.
Yeah.
And I kind of was soul searching for my purpose.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it didn't, even though I know I love golf and I enjoy golf and I played for a lot of my life, that wasn't going to bring me
Purpose.
goal
Yeah.
and happiness,
Yeah.
purpose and happiness
Yeah.
every day. And then I realized if I'm going to be a good father, I'm going to be a good husband, and I'm going to be, utilizing the skills I've learned in business.
Yeah.
If I can find what I love doing in business, which is working with great teams
You
and
can
great
do it
leaders,
definitely.
I can sit with you and tell your story and really enjoy this and learn something. So
Yeah.
I found like having that curiosity.
Yeah.
And does that tie in here?
It
Of like
does.
having some sort of
Chris,
curiosity, going down rabbit holes, finding people around you that you can just go for hours on a topic?
Yeah, absolutely. A few things. You said so many just amazing things that I just want to pick up on.
Yeah.
And so let me just take three of them. The first thing you said, which was, which is if you find your purpose, your raison d'etre, your ikigai, and this kind of what is my purpose and reason for being, then I can do that forever. I can be in a state of flow forever. And that is, people who study kind of the blue zones and where people who have long lifespans, they tend to never stop being in their purpose. They never stop being in their flow. And so if the only opportunity you have to demonstrate, your purpose is by, conquering and accumulating money and this type of stuff, that you're going to very struggle with that. But let me tell you what the research suggests true fulfillment comes from, because it'll be interesting how that looks in different seasons of your life.